Like the animation, we might have to work on the music though. Rolling out a new segment here tonight. It's called Trash by Trump, and it's anything but funny. Each time, we're going to focus on a particular norm that the president has obliterated in his 4 years. Now, there's too many to mention, but it includes checks and balances, independent judiciary, working with allies, things like financial transparency, and I can go on and on and on. But today, we want to take a look at one issue, and obviously top of mind, which is public health. How the president has played politics consistently with science, and he's forced his political agenda down the throats of formerly apolitical organizations like the alphabet soups of the CDC, NIH, FDA. He's also attacked the leading infectious disease expert in our nation.
People are tired of hearing Fauci and all these idiots, these people that have gotten it wrong. Fauci's a nice guy. He's been here for 500 years. Every time he goes on television, there's always a bomb, but there's a bigger bomb if you fire him. But Fauci's a disaster.
Right, because he's the guy who told us it was all going to just disappear here and COVID was all just a hoax. Okay, now let's introduce RFL's executive producer, Larry Epstein. He's going to show you how political hacks, they've been bullying career scientists, and it's all happening during the biggest public health crisis we've had in more than a century, Larry.
Thanks, Rich. Those bombshells that Trump was talking about with Fauci are unbelievable. All he did was keep saying how bad the pandemic was. We had to be careful. It was going to keep getting worse, but I digress. So we're going to start with the Centers for Disease Control, the CDC. ProPublica, it published this piece called The Fall of the CDC, and it describes how this world-class organization has been, and this is their words, brought to its knees by the virus, but also how its leaders have capitulated to the president and his people. They got their hands on hundreds of emails, including one that was typed out after the administration bullied the CDC into loosening the guidance about how many people could fill the churches. Remember that whole flap? I'm going to quote it. I am very troubled on this Sunday morning that there will be people who will get sick and perhaps die because of what we were forced to do. Other emails showed career scientists at the CDC saying the damage could last for decades to the agency. Doctors and scientists were openly talking about what their hill to die on, that's a direct quote, would be as they battled the political hacks who are constantly pestering them and pushing them to downgrade guidance and basically just to downplay the severity of the virus itself, because it would make the president look bad if the virus looked that bad and it was against his messaging. They were worried that if they left and they spoke out, that the White House would just stop consulting with the CDC at all, and that they would push through policies that were even worse and make things even worse. But that's not all. With the Trump administration, that's never it. A former HHS science advisor, a guy named Paul Alexander, he had the ear of the president. He believed in herd immunity, which is basically saying get everyone sick, enough people will get sick, and we'll get inoculated from this thing. So Politico got its hands on some of the emails from this guy, and this is one of them. Infants, kids, teens, young people, young adults, middle-aged with no conditions, etc. They have zero to little risk, so let's use them to develop herd. We want them infected. This is an actual HHS guy writing this, but it gets worse. That guy worked for this guy, another political appointee who was given his big job at the HHS with no experience in public health.
There are scientists who work for this government who do not want America to get well, not until after Joe Biden is president. Ladies and gentlemen, that's sedition. They are sacrificing lives in order to defeat Donald Trump. Ladies and gentlemen, that's sedition.
I always wonder where Trump finds these guys. By the way, both Alexander and that guy Caputo were gone for the government months ago, but only in this administration can people like this, during a pandemic, have a role in the messaging or anything to do with public health. It really tells you all you need to know about the Trump administration.
And as you said, these were not lone folks. Just to disprove things, his whole idea that seditious behavior, putting people at risk, I want to remind people, the president said, among other things, you talked about, packed churches. Well, remember what the president said? He wanted packed pews for Easter. He told us that First, COVID was all a hoax. It was going to disappear like a miracle. It was going to vanish here during the summer months. This herd immunity thing, if you've paid attention, Sweden tried it, and now their prime minister has apologized to the people for making a huge error, listening to the quacks here instead of the real scientists. Too many Swedes have died as a consequence. But with all that, Larry, you get to the players, and I don't think people can appreciate. We talk about Fauci's been there for, I think, 6 administrations, nearly 50 years. People like Jared Kushner, Ivanka Trump, Peter Navarro, who's a trade guy. I mean, and Scott Atlas, he's a radiologist. He's not even an epidemiologist. That these delusional quacks thought that they knew better than the scientists and the doctors with no experience, no background, no expertise. You know, I think that's going to be part of the legacy of this thing. The people completely unqualified had the nerve to not only tell people what to do, but thought they knew more than them.
I know, and imagine if we had 4 more years of it. Like, we like to talk about what would happen if we had 4 more years of Trump. This might have been the most dangerous thing of having 4 more years of Trump, because gutting the CDC, they were tamping down the reports that the CDC was putting out, which they've done for decades, but it's ever more important during a pandemic, talking about the death numbers, the hospitalizations. If they looked too bad, they didn't even want them released. And people like Kellyanne Conway and Ivanka Trump were actually involved with the messaging at the CDC and bullying the career scientists.
And by the way, a lot of the people, history may show, may have spoken up or should have spoken up sooner. They were concerned, not just for their jobs, they were concerned if they weren't alone in the room. Do we remember Trump basically turning to Dr. Birx and saying, hey, how about we inject bleach into people, pushing hydroxy, even though everybody had said that it'd be dangerous and people even died from taking it? The point is, you're right, we ducked a bullet. Imagine the destruction, the permanent institutional destructions to, I mentioned the organizations that we never thought were Republican or Democrat. We thought they were about science and fact.
I know, you would never think that, again, only with Trump, that the CDC could become politicized. It's really unbelievable. I did a ton of reading about this, and many of the people there were saying that they were just being totally stifled. And these aren't politicians. They don't know how to deal with someone like Kellyanne Conway, a career, she is a swamp creature, talking about sweet crunchers, a career political operative weaseling in there and telling them how to do their jobs. They're not used to dealing with that.
And they had the threat, as we saw this in, talk to the folks in Georgia or Michigan or Pennsylvania, death threats for people just counting votes. Well, Fauci had to have permanent security attached because of what the president's lackeys were saying, that he was an enemy of the state. Anyway, great job, Larry. Thank you. When we come back, big names continue to fly, speaking of Georgia, in the campaign in those 2 Senate races. Kamala Harris, the latest Democrat, trying to move the lead needle. We're going to show you what she said, and also we'll get a live report from on the ground.